I'm home.
Throws to the near side, and that's intercepted. Intercepted by Jack Jones, heading down the near sideline, and this will be a pick six for Jack Jones and a touchdown for Arizona State.
People here, when you think of Sun Devil football, you think of Sun Devil for life.
Here we go, 7 seconds. Berkovici. He's just going to air it out deep downfield, and no white shirts around. Oh, Jalen Strong! Caught for a touchdown! Jalen Strong makes the catch!
I went to Arizona State. Right. I'm a Sun Devil, man.
This is about the Valley. We need the Valley. If we get the Valley all in, the sky is the limit.
Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, it is late January, but things are still moving at a rapid pace for Sun Devil football. The whirlwind that was the first of two transfer portal windows has officially closed. The schedule is out. Quarterback rumors are starting to heat up yet again. And so, I mean, again, we talk about it all the time. There truly is no offseason.
No offseason whatsoever. Yeah, with that first window of the transfer portal coming to a close, I believe it was yesterday as we are recording here. I know the numbers were kind of neck and neck and have been so far between ASU and Colorado, but when Kenny Dillingham said that he was going to attack the portal, that was not just coach speak, because about 24, if not more, transfers are now Sun Devils. The work that he and the staff have done here in just, my goodness, a month and a half, whatever it's been since he was hired. Really, really impressive stuff. Some new names to the list, obviously. Week after week, seemingly day after day, there have just been more additions to the fray as ASU looks to turn the page and restock and retool and reload and get things going off to a positive direction in year one under Dillingham and staff. Yeah,
you mentioned it. Over 24, over 24 now, because as we'll talk about later on, ASU's 25th edition through the portal, quite a big one, quite notable. A 5-star guy coming in to Tempe. So we are going to break all that down: who came, who went, what it all means, where they did well, maybe some areas that ASU could still bolster in that second transfer portal window, which will be opening up on May 1st. We're also going to break down and give our thoughts about the schedules. Finally, we knew who ASU was going to play. Now we know when they're going to play them. And a little bit later on, to close the show, we're going to talk to a local quarterback, 2024 prospect out of Sunny Slope High School, who's getting a lot of attention, and a lot of attention from ASU, a priority target, Luke Moga, to get his thoughts on what it's like being a priority target of this Sun Devil staff, what this offensive Kenny Dillingham brings, and how appealing it is to a local quarterback as well. So really some good things that Luke's going to bring a little bit later on. But before we dive into all that, it's time to take a bite out of some of the latest headlines to get you caught up on.
I mean, a lot of folks have New Year's resolutions. You know, I'm doing this whole 75 hard thing for these first couple months. It's a pretty cool deal. If you haven't made one yet, or if you just want to take one on here a couple weeks into the new year, it's never too late to adjust life. My suggestion is make a resolution to eat as many meals of food as humanly possible at DeFalco's Deli, 2334 North Scottsdale Road, of course, in lovely Scottsdale, Arizona. You can find their menu online at defalcosdeli.com. I'm kind of struggling right now because this workout plan I'm on is a good deal, but the meal plan, got to keep it tight there. Got to keep it real basic, real simple, real bland. There's none of that. There's no blandness when you're going to DeFalco's Deli. It is flavor country, brothers and sisters. We were giving out some recommendations. You might have seen this on Twitter. Folks are asking us, what's the go-to meal? We got a few that we go with, but you cannot miss at anything on the menu. I swear to you, you could just throw a dart at the menu. Whatever you hit is going to be gold. Of course, at DeFalco's Deli, once again, at 2334 North Scottsdale Road in Scottsdale, and online at defalcosdeli.com.
All right, so a couple of additions to get you caught up on outside of the transfer portal, which we'll go into great depth a little bit later on. So, of course, as we know, ASU had some departures through the place-kicking ranks, and as we will talk about, they brought in a kicker with some FBS Power 5 experience, but also they're taking a look at the future of the position. They got a commitment from Karsten Kiefer, a local kicker out of Corona del Sol High School. This past season, he was 43 of 43 on his extra points, 4 of 8 on field goals, career long of 54, so he's got some strength, and also the luxury of perhaps having some time to develop.
Yeah, so that's a big thing. It's interesting how you've seen a lot of situations where ASU has a contingency plan or a plan B or just that next move in place. A lot of cases, especially these position groups like kicker and punter, where it's kind of a zero-sum deal. You got one guy. It's not a multiplayer position. When ASU has had the departures it's had, the transfer portal, it's only a matter of maybe a few days that the Sun Devils reload with a scholarship caliber player. So that really shows something that this staff, whatever goes on behind the scenes, whether these transfers are, predictable or whether they're surprising, whatever it may be, the staff is not just, twiddling its thumbs, sitting down trying to figure things out, waiting for somebody to come to them or, waiting for something in the summer to really take it to the 11th hour. You've seen the spots get filled very quickly, and in some cases with a few players, as is the case at place kicker. So, again, you hate to lose some of the players that have been lost, but the ability ASU has had to replace those players quickly with scholarship caliber players is impressive.
All right, another addition that is actually, I think, been going on for a little bit, but now I think is now publicly known. And it's one that has been talked about for a little bit, but it is great to see this guy back in the fold. Program legend, DJ Foster, stepping in as the manager of player development. He's going to be a guy that's going to be working with some of the student athletes and kind of getting them ready and getting to the life aspect, as well as kind of working with some alumni and getting them back in the fold. So again, just having DJ Foster back as a part of Sun Devil football, great to see.
Yeah, I mean, he's an all-timer. I mean, anyone who follows me or us knows how big we are on him. Obviously, friend of the show. We've had him on several times. Some awesome talks we've had with DJ over the years. I mean, as far as Sun Devils as athletes and people, and one that truly bleed maroon and gold, DJ Foster is a Mount Rushmore caliber guy to me in that regard. I just can't say enough nice things about him. He's just he's a decent and wonderful human being, an incredible athlete. I wish he would have been able to have a 10-plus year NFL career, but you know what? His life's taken him in a different direction, and that direction has brought him back to Tempe, and that's just a absolutely priceless component that he brings to this athletic department, this football program, because you talk about a guy who's a local guy who came up as a massive big time recruiting prospect, succeeded at ASU, made it to the NFL the hard way as an undrafted free agent, got a Super Bowl ring, played in Canada, involved in some other things as well from the sports perspective. So just I think he's going to be a tremendous asset to what he does. He's someone that's beloved by the entire community and respected by the athletic department as he should be. So real eager to see him involved. I think this role specifically is something that's real good for him. We've had conversations. It's popped up wondering if he's going to be like a GA or in a coaching capacity. But I think this is something real interesting for him because he just has a lot of expertise that he can share with current and future student athletes for ASU. Especially ones who are, have the objective, of course, to play professional football. He can tell them what it's like. So, again, big pickup, thrilled for him, glad that he's back here in Tempe.
Yeah, and just kind of shows ASU's putting some actions to their words of, trying to develop these student athletes to be more than just, football players, but also guide them, on the path professionally, whether it is continued in sports or elsewhere. So, having a guy like DJ Foster being one of those key components and a conduit in that capacity is really great to see. Sometimes we'll check in on some former names from here and there, some people that have, players and coaches passed through Tempe and are doing some things elsewhere. This one is kind of unique in the capacity that now he's gone, but now it's probably going to be very involved in terms of, ASU's recruiting picture because he's now taken over one of the state's powerhouse programs. Former ASU offensive coordinator Zach Hill, who, of course, resigned in kind of amidst, in the midst of the NCAA investigation. I believe he was an OC at another program in the state this past season. But with Jason Mons, the guy who led Sorrel to 7 state titles, now ASU's tight ends coach, they had an opening that Zach Hill has now filled. He is now the SaberCats head coach. So it's interesting now that you have one of those the pipeline programs, one of the elite programs in the entire country, is now being led by ASU's former OC.
Yeah, that was really interesting news when that came out. I'm certainly very happy for him. It's just a crummy deal altogether. What has gone on with the ASU football program, in the Herm Edwards, Antonio Pierce stuff of the last couple years prior to Kenny Dillingham's arrival, and there were people that came here to do their job and to try to be successful at it, and that whole tornado came through and really affected some lives. So, to see him coaching at a nationally prominent program in this area, that's awesome. I mean, he was kind to me in the interactions that I had with him during his time here at ASU. So it's something that you want to be certainly supportive of. And you figure that being in that location, that there will be a good relationship with ASU. I would imagine there are fans wondering, does he have a bone to pick with ASU, or is that going to be something? Is he going to, refuse his players to be recruited or something like that? I think that would be obviously pretty ridiculous if anyone were to, make that claim. Obviously, with ASU having a new staff, the page has been turned here, and when you have Jason Mons on staff, that is a great ambassador, a great kind of liaison back with that high school that certainly will produce a ton of talent in the years to come. So all in all, it's a great thing to see, in my opinion.
So as we mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking to Luke Moga, a 2024 local quarterback prospect. There is potentially some other quarterback news that is of note. Jaden Rashada is obviously one of the nation's elite quarterback recruits in this 2023 class. He was a one-time Miami commit, then flipped to Florida amidst talk of a very significant NIL deal. He has now asked for, and I believe has secured his release from his letter of intent at Florida. The story goes that the collectives on the Florida front promised upwards of $13 million. Some things on their side did not come through, so they, kind of that agreement. One side doesn't fall through, the other side might look elsewhere. Now, of course, Jaden Rashada's dad was a former Sun Devil player. In his own right, ASU was involved in the recruitment process earlier. And I believe Kenny Dillingham, when he was the offensive coordinator at Oregon, had built up a pretty good relationship with Jaden Rashada. So now the rumor mill is moving a little bit that perhaps ASU could be potentially in the mix. Now, when you have those NIL figures floating out there that he had, the Florida deal was in the neighborhood of $13 million. The Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee around $8 million. So ASU, of course, being a little late to the NIL game, you don't know where that capacity is, but you never know these days of just how these wins might shift and do so suddenly.
Yeah, it's a really interesting storyline to follow. Been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of information over the past several months regarding that recruit that has come out that, some has been debated about whether or not it's accurate. So been, again, quite a bit that's gone on there. The bottom line of it, he's a Sun Devil legacy. His father was a defensive back here in the 1990s. And I'm sure a lot of folks would love to see him in maroon and gold. He's a top-tier talent. And then, of course, you've got Israel Carter, who did not sign with ASU in the early signing period, and all signs point to him not being an option for Arizona State moving forward. So obtaining a quarterback in this class would be important, even though ASU obviously has acquired some transfers as well. So if the opportunity is there to pick up a prime-time quarterback in this class, I mean, you take that all day, tremendously talented player. And then again, just that added benefit on the top is that he's a Sun Devil legacy. That would be a cool thing as well.
And he also wears the number 5, which apparently has become an unofficial requirement to be the Sun Devil starting quarterback in recent years. But also, as we close out the news, Joe, some exciting stuff on the Activate ASU front.
Yeah, so today, here we are on Thursday recording. And some news came out that was released that the board for Activate ASU was announced. And among those was yours truly, your old buddy Joe Healy. This is a conversation that I had been having a few weeks back when I saw some of this activity going on Twitter. Just got involved in in communicating with the folks that were running the whole thing to kind of kick the tires, see what they're all about, see what they've got going on, and just seemed like really something that's up my alley for sure. And as I've learned more, it really coincides with some things personally that I've been enthusiastic for a very long time, which is just kind of bonding the community here for ASU. So just to kind of give you a little bit of insight. I mean, it's still developing. There's a lot that's going to come out, but just to kind of give you some insight about what this is. I mean, ultimately, it's Sun Devils supporting Sun Devils. I mean, that's really what this is all about. It's pretty simple, really. The primary goal here is to help activate local businesses, especially those that support ASU, Sun Devil Athletics, and the Arizona State community, drive fan engagement there, help those businesses, and in turn help support ASU athletics. Another objective is to provide a resource to people who want to find Sun Devil-owned businesses of all kinds and potentially take advantage of discounts or other accommodations that can be arranged for ASU fans. If you've been following along on social media so far, you've probably seen things already with some local restaurants. That's a part of it, but this is open to literally every type of business under the sun. This isn't just a food and beverage thing, but it certainly does include that. So if you're a Sun Devil and involved with business ownership, we want to help direct fellow Sun Devils to you. Also, it's going to be a platform to help connect ASU student athletes with local businesses to hopefully create opportunities now and in the future. So a lot of folks have asked so far, how can I get involved? Obviously, again, a lot more is going to come out about that, but that's up to you, the diehard Sun Devil fan. Connections will be made with various groups and organizations that cater to the Sun Devil community, as well as the network of Sun Devil-owned businesses that we all know is vast and not just nationwide, but worldwide. So the social media is active. If you haven't seen it already, if you don't follow us, please certainly do. It's activate_ASU. It's the same thing on Twitter and Instagram. The website will be launched here very soon. So for now, connect with us on social media, and especially if you're a business owner, whether that's in Tempe, the Phoenix area, or anywhere on the planet, reach out to us. Let's talk about how we can help you and help you get engaged with the Sun Devil community. Help your business thrive based on participation from the Sun Devil community. One big thing, one important thing, this isn't about money. There's no sales pitch or cash grab or anything like that. This is an initiative born in passion for the university and community that we all love to unite us and to help the entire Sun Devil community thrive. And part of that Sun Devil community that we want to help thrive, as always, as we always have supported, is our good friends at Cactus Sports. You got to get out there. You got to get geared up for the new year. New year, new gear. Not new year, new me. New year, new gear. Let's do it. You know what I'm saying? Get on down to Cactus Sports there on Mill Avenue. Shop till you drop. Check them out online at cactussports.com. You know, you bought your winter clothes there, I'm sure, because everybody obviously listens to the wonderful advice that we give on this wonderful show here. It's going to start getting warmer. I hate the thought. It makes me physically ill. I like the cool weather. I run hot. I live in Arizona. I get it. I should be okay with the heat. I don't like it. Anyhow, when the heat starts creeping in, spring starts creeping in, you need to get like some short sleeves, or you know me, like a good old tank top to get the gun show going. Whatever you're looking for, get it on at Cactus Sports. Once again, of course, we all know you can catch that Mill Avenue location. It's been there for years, over 30 years. They're one of the longest tenured businesses in Tempe, in the ASU area. Think about that. Cactus Sports, not a lot of folks have been around as long as them, more than 30 years, supporting the Sun Devil community. And, of course, you can purchase wonderful paraphernalia that they offer for sale on cactussports.com.
All right, Joe, let's dive into ASU's just released 2023 schedule. Now, of course, we knew the non-conference schedule for a while. We knew how the schedule rotation would play out. We knew that ASU would have 8 home games. And this is just the third time this century that the Sun Devils are going to be at home 8 times during the season. The last 2 times, 2007 and 2013. Pretty good years. So, and I think coming into both of those, ASU was not necessarily thought to be doing some big things. So perhaps another parallel. I don't know if you're into omens, like a lot of ASU fans seem to be. Anyway, so let's break things down. Probably easiest to go month by month. Now, ASU, of course, knew that the first 3 games of the season, their non-conference slate, would all be at home. Thursday, August 31st, against Southern Utah. Saturday, September 9th, against Oklahoma State. Then they close out the non-con slate. Saturday, September 16th, against Fresno State. I guess we can talk about just those real quick specifically before we dive into the other conference stuff. I think it's good. I mean, it seems like it's almost an annual thing now, where like the season opens on a Thursday for ASU, which is good. Kind of gets a little extra time. It gives me perhaps a little extra few days of preparation before the big Oklahoma State game. Now, Oklahoma State, of course, is losing a lot of guys from last year's team, and of course they kind of fell apart a little bit after I believe ASU was they were top 10 team when they hosted ASU. Fresno State, of course, losing Jake Haener as well. So, I mean, this is there's a lot of questions about how this ASU team's going to look, especially with upwards of 40 plus new players. But I think that's getting all three of those games at home, it's pretty manageable.
Yeah, some interesting matchups, obviously, especially those two FBS ones in Oklahoma State and Fresno State. Quick glimpse at these opponents: Southern Utah 5-6 in 2022, lost to Utah 73-7. So that's basically what they did in the year 2022. Oklahoma State, real interesting. As you mentioned, they really fell off. They finished 7-6. They lost their last 3 games and 5 of their last 6. I didn't pay too close of attention to them. I don't know what in the world happened in the last half of that season because, even though ASU was highly competitive in that game up there, it was still a top 10 team that was looking pretty good. As you mentioned, they have lost a lot of players on both sides of the ball, including their quarterback. So, that's going to be a big question mark when you have a team that really failed to live up to expectations last year and they lose a lot of talent. Could be an opportunity for ASU to strike. Fresno State, very interesting team, finished 10-4 after starting 1-4. So they had 9 straight wins. So here's a little trivia question. I mean, one of them is going to be real easy. But there are only 2 FBS teams that will enter the 2023 season with longer active winning streaks than the 9 games that Fresno State won to end the season. Can you name those 2 teams?
Georgia's riding a 16-game.
So they're at 17 now.
17's okay.
So there's one, and this one's a prize. I thought Georgia would have been the only one.
Longer than 9.
And longer than 9.
Oh, geez.
Georgia's obviously number 1, so it's not bigger than 17. But
oh, damn! Because the bowl games get tricky.
Yeah. This team has 11. So they won their last.
Kansas State.
Troy.
Oh, that's right.
So Fresno State is the 3rd longest active winning streak. But as you mentioned, Jake Haener, been around for a long time. He's gone. When you have to replace such an integral part, you never really know. And then that's a lot of maybe dominoes falling, if you want to say it that way, where, if ASU were to beat Oklahoma State, Sun fans are going to be paranoid about playing Fresno State. So there are some interesting challenges. But again, if you look at what Oklahoma State did prior to last year, this isn't really that same team. If you look at what Fresno State did last year, is that the same team? So again, some interesting question marks, some opportunities. It's going to be challenging, but again, it's some opportunities for ASU in that first 3-game stretch.
Can't believe I said Kansas State. Just remembered their bowl showing against
Bama. Yeah.
Oh, what am I thinking? Yeah. So obviously, those 3 games there in the non-con, but then ASU opens up the conference slate in a pretty big way. They're hosting the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams, and USC. Perhaps an advantage there that it's going to be still really freaking hot outside. Maybe, without Nesta Jade Silvera cooling off Caleb, he won't be doing so well. So that's going to be a big way to open up the conference slate. And then the ASU will they'll close out the month with the first road game of the year when they head to the Bay Area to face Cal. So an interesting set of 2 games to open up the conference slate. One, I think ASU, of course, will be a pretty heavy underdog, but Cal's kind of in disarray, and so I think that right now, that should be a winnable game.
Yeah, I mean, man, that USC game, you look at it, obviously it's real easy to say that if you can find a way to get, those first 3 or maybe Southern Utah and Fresno, some combination where you get some momentum. I understand coming off a 3-win season, it sounds greedy to peck too many games as wins, but, if you look at them and think if you can make something happen in that first stretch, that September 23rd game with USC could be a real exciting environment. Now, on the contrary, if you struggle out of the gates and say if you go 1-2, that would be a rough game for sure. Maybe kind of like what we saw, last year against Utah, where ASU just never was really in it. Obviously, Utah's a very good team, as should be USC. So that's going to be an early opportunity for Kenny Dillingham to show what he's got. And then, as you mentioned with Cal, Cal just isn't a team that creates much, intimidation or concern at all. Now then, obviously, if ASU happens to be, riding some losing streak, or once again, the ever common Sun Devil fan fear of, winning a big game and then suffering a big hangover loss afterward, a lot of things are present. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. But, you look at that first stretch in that, first month worth of games, and, you feel like the getting out of it with a winning record is plausible, possible. You got to get at least two of those, the bracket one, Southern Utah and Cal. And if you can get another one, then you get some momentum. And if you do better than that, then things are interesting. Obviously, just so many wild cards, so many unknowns. But looking at things on paper, it is an interesting first month or so. Brings its challenges, but brings its opportunities.
Yeah, we could probably just even extend it to that first week in October. ASU's game that they'll be hosting, Coach Prime and Colorado. The Buffs just actually flipped the number one corner in the 2023 class. Flipped him from, I believe, Miami. Colorado was so bad. They got a ways to go. I think people need to maybe tap the brakes on the Coach Prime hype as of right now. So ASU has the bye week right smack dab in the middle, October 14th. So they got 6 games on either side. I think if ASU can get competent quarterback play, I don't necessarily think, with some of the other question marks facing the program, that 4-2 is out of the question. I don't know that I'm going to pick it, but I don't think that 4-2 is out of the question to start. And I think if you're going to make a run at a bowl, you might need that 4-2 because the back half of the schedule, as we'll get into, is pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, obviously, in that stretch, you only have one road game, and it's not at a road venue or opponent that strikes a lot of fear into you. Now, granted, I'm sure a lot of folks are going to say that about ASU this year, but so be it. And then, I'm with you on the Colorado thing. I think that's either going to be a resounding success or a major clown show. I don't personally care for just the egregious self-promotion and everything being put on video. And I mean, I get why they do it, and it draws attention, and it's doing what it's doing for Colorado. It's just not really my style.
That Tim Brewster clip was just weird yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, they're just basically just doing everything with this social media emphasis and this not even transparency. It's just kind of just self-promotion at its finest. That's the world we're living in. But you know what? If it works, it works. I mean, to their credit, I mean, they've obviously got a tremendous amount of exposure for it. So we shall see on that regard. But yes, 2 teams in similar positions, reloading vastly. So for this game to be in Tempe, and if ASU can build up some momentum, that'll be very, very interesting. And I know that we're both in agreement in being very happy that this week 0 plan did not come to fruition. That would have done absolutely nothing good for ASU and would have been just a parade of Colorado compliments and Coach Prime adulation. So that, I'm glad, did not come to pass.
Yeah, and so at ASU, of course, will have those first 6 games, then the bye week, and then they close out the month with the battle against the Washington schools. First, on Saturday, October 21st, they'll be heading up to Seattle to face what I assume at this point is probably going to be the Pac-12 favorite, Washington. Then they close out by coming back home to host Wazoo. I think, again, that's probably a situation where you're going to hope for a split. Washington's going to be real tough. Michael Penix is coming back. We saw what they were able to do this past season. I mean, they were, the ASU upset loss away from, perhaps, making a run at the playoff or something. But those 2 games will close out October. If you can split those, that'll be good because a brutal November is lurking. They start off with 2 road games on November 4th at Utah, November 11th at UCLA. Then November 18th, Oregon comes to town a week before. And then I don't know where you stand on this, Joe. On Saturday, November 25th, will be the duel in the desert for the Territorial Cup. don't know, are you a Friday after Thanksgiving, or does it not matter to you?
I am a Friday after Thanksgiving day game guy. If you're asking me my preference, for sure. It's less of a hill that I want to die on than others. Like, that's what I prefer, but I don't think that it's complete sacrilege, for it to be on a Saturday. Just a lot of great memories, a lot of memories. They're not all great, but a lot of memories tied to, being in Sun Devil Stadium with, the sun up or near sundown in a, tense and brutal, sometimes wins, sometimes gut-wrenching loss to the Wildcats. So that's kind of the tradition element of it. But honestly, I prefer the if it's a day, I'm more adamant about the kickoff time than the day.
That makes sense.
I like
That's
it
fair.
to be a day game as opposed to the day. Like, I'd rather be a Saturday day game as opposed to a Friday night. Put it that way, because I think this is a game that just that environment is what really resonates with me. Going back to the top, if we're talking after the bye week, things flip around tremendously when you're talking about the series with the Huskies, because obviously ASU has dominated Washington in Tempe for over 20 years now. But the recent luck in Seattle, with the exception of the Rashad White engineered win over a terrible Washington team in 2021, ASU has not fared well in Seattle. And even though it's not terribly late in the year, so the weather won't be as much of an issue as it would be if it were maybe a month later, it's still cold in Seattle and Washington in October 21st. So that's going to be tough. And as you mentioned, as long as they don't have some sophomore slump for Kalen DeBoer, that should be a prime time type of team, a nationally ranked team. I'm sure a lot of folks will kind of debate whether it's them, Utah, USC as far as the conference favorite, but it could be like 1A and 1B, something like that. Conversely, Washington State coming here gives you a lot more hope than playing up in the Pacific Northwest. Utah is just going to continue to be a tough out, with Cameron Rising coming back and just what they've stocked up. Playing in Salt Lake City, once again, that's a tough environment for ASU to be in. I think, what was it, 2017, the last time that ASU won in Salt Lake, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, with the Huntley throwing 4 picks and the J.J. Wilson pick 6 seal it.
Yeah, so it's been a while there. And then I think that game, at the Rose Bowl is going to be real critical. Be interesting to see how UCLA fares without DTR. So interesting opportunity there. That could be one of those, like when we talk about our most important games other than the Territorial Cup, that one might be an early pick for me. And you got 2 huge home games to close out the season, kind of like you did back in 2019 when ASU upset the Ducks and then beat the Wildcats. So yeah, that back into the schedule is going to be a challenge. So I think if I know a lot of people have different expectations and think that bowl eligibility might be a super lofty goal. If you want to get there, I think you got to have a winning record, like you alluded to, at the bye. It's going to be hard to kind of go 500 and then 500, if that makes sense. But again, all in all, if we're looking at this just from a general recap perspective, surprisingly, shockingly, I think like the Pac-12 made a mistake that ASU's not going to the Pacific Northwest in mid to late November.
Yeah, weather-wise, this is actually pretty great.
Yeah.
I mean, mid-November in Pasadena. I mean, early November in Salt Lake, but I mean, could have been worse.
I mean, you're going to get something. You know what I mean? Like between the climates of a lot, other than the California schools and, Arizona, you're pretty much, have about half the conference where when you get in November, it's going to be, cold, whether it's Colorado, Utah, Oregon, Washington, something like that. So, you're not going to completely avoid it, but yeah, for your last cold weather climate game to be on November 4th, that's about as good as it's been in any year that I can remember. Yeah, I mean, obviously just the 8 games, man, that's something real intriguing for Sun Devil fans. When you look at the slate, I mean, goodness gracious, some very good teams there as well. So if you're an ASU fan, if you're not already back on board or on board, it's a good time to get on board. So it's going to be real interesting. A lot of questions to be answered, of course, not just with ASU, but its opponents. What will Oklahoma State and Fresno State be like? Will the Pac-12 be as good from near top to bottom as it was last year with all of these 8, 9, 10 win teams, or is it going to revert back to a little bit more of dog eat dog within the league and not as much on the top end productivity? So ASU is going to be a part of it. It. On the surface, if we go off of what happened last year in college football with these teams, not an easy slate for Kenny Dillingham, but I know he doesn't want it easy.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty manageable slate. I mean, you knew the opponents already, and you knew that there's going to be some tough games, but I think the way it spaces out kind of eases things in a little bit, as much as some of those quality teams can be easy, but doing so at home can help things out, get things going a little bit, and of course ending with 2 straight on the at home, including the crucial matchup to take back the cup is going to be a good test. So we will see how this all plays out. Again, this is just the 3rd time this century with 8 home games, so it'll be a good run for the Devils in Tempe, getting your season ticket holder values for sure this year. So before now we're going to take a look at ASU's portal activity now that the window, the 45 days of madness, are officially closed. And Joe, I know that a lot of these were known to Huddle subscribers on DevilsDigest.com.
Yeah, it has been rare recently that a transfer has been announced publicly on social media, and those who are subscribed members, premium members on Devil's Digest, didn't already know what was happening. You got to get in the know if you aren't already. Become a member of the Huddle on DevilsDigest.com. Of course, that gives you access to content from across the Rivals network. Great coverage of recruiting, the transfer portal, everything just about in college football, college basketball. My goodness, if you're a Sun Devil fan, this is the place for you. And folks have certainly gotten their money's worth over the past couple of months with what ASU has done in the transfer portal, in recruiting, and obviously the coaching hire as well. And that's not going to slow down. Of course, ASU basketball in full swing with the season that is worth watching. Sun Devil baseball is going to be kicking up here in just a little under a month. And then before we know it, you're going to have that February signing period. You're going to have that spring transfer period. You're going to have spring football. And then, hey, football season will be here after that. I mean, this is a non-stop affair and the best place to get the best information if you are a die-hard Sun Devil is on DevilsDigest.com.
All right, Joe. So before we run down the fun stuff, the arrivals, the new Sun Devils, it is worth going over the 20 players that ASU, I gotta say 16 that have gone and committed elsewhere, or in fact some have signed, and the 4 others that remain in the portal. Also some quick numbers. As mentioned earlier, that was just the first of 2 transfer portal windows. The next one opens up on May 1st and runs through May 15th. Of course, if you're a grad transfer, you can jump in at any time. But one key point that even though the January 18th deadline was for entry, so you can't, players that are currently in, and there's still a lot of players in there, they can commit elsewhere and still be eligible for this upcoming season. The deadline was just for entering the portal, and so if a player wants to enter in, they have to wait until May 1st. Now, some interesting stats that I wanted to pass along real quick. That was from a study that the Athletic published. During this 45-day window, 1,285 FBS players entered the portal.
Seemed like that was happening per day. But go ahead.
Yeah. Only 25% of that number were grad transfers. That total is up over 24% from last year's cycle. Now, 64% of all those FBS scholarship players in the portal have made commitments. If you just limited that to just Power 5 scholarship transfers, that number is up to 72. And so among the 964 total FBS scholarship transfers who have made commitments, 42% are actually moving down a level. So that would be, if you're in the P5 or do it to the G5 or FCS or even the JUCO or something along those lines. That 42% is actually down a little bit from last year. So perhaps we might start see some things correcting a little bit. We will see. Anyway, it's been madness. Of course, it sparked a lot of talk about just the kind of craziness of the calendar, the early signing period amongst the the end of season, postseason, bowl prep, just everything all at once. December is just madness, so we might see some calendar adjustments moving in the future. Anyway, let's talk about some of the players, Joe. Now, I think that let's do a little bit of an exercise here. So between these 20 players that we'll run down, we talked about most of these guys leaving the program already. But let's do a 1 to 10 scale. 1 is a complete non-factor of an impact to the program. 10 is a devastating blow to the Sun Devil program. How much each of these guys leave, and do you think? Because there's been I've seen a lot of discussion out there, so I think this might be good to put it in context, that ASU was just absolutely ravaged by the portal departures. Now, last year, I think they were hit much harder, but let's see. Starting off as with the two first entries, where this actually happened during the season, cornerback Keon Markham and safety Kewan Markham. They are 2 of the 4 who are in the portal but have not yet committed elsewhere. For me, I'd say maybe a 5 for both of those guys.
I think it's generous. I was going to say somewhere between 3 and 5. By no means irreplaceable. Obviously, they're Power 5 caliber players, but by no means irreplaceable. So and they were during the season, and I just don't think that you can attribute any deficiencies on defense to them. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to necessarily disagree with you, but I'd say 5 at best, somewhere in the middle capacity.
Yeah, I'd say I think there was some upside there. I mean, I like Kewan as a safety. Keon had some competition, had some moments in practice, never could put together. Quarterback Paul Tyson was the 3rd Sun Devil to go in the portal. He committed to Clemson. I put that as like a 1, maybe 2. I mean, he was the 3rd string guy. Never had any consideration in terms of actual playing time.
Never did anything here, and that's not a slight to him. It just didn't happen. So 1, can I do 0? 1 or 0? I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not a slight to him. It's not disrespect. It's a guy who never played here. Maybe he has potential. Maybe it'll show. But off of what has happened right now, you just simply can't say that anything has been lost from the program.
Yeah, and so of course, we wish these guys well. I mean, and hopefully they have great success. Joe Moore had kind of an interesting ride. Of course, came in as a 4-star prospect to ASU, flashed some potential here and there. Initially committed along with Daniel Ngata to Washington. That was kind of then there was a reported mutual parting of the ways. But he is now, as a St. Louis kid, he looks like he's heading back home. He has committed to Mizzou. I really liked his upside. I thought that he was starting to come into his own. The numbers that I didn't think this year reflected that. So I would say perhaps just on an upside play there, and perhaps some questions at ASU. Maybe a 6 to 7 or something.
6 was the number I was going to go with. Someone that has shown some improvement and some flash each year. Someone that can start at this level, but not the complaints or I would say the pain that Sun Devil fans feel about his departure is so much more oriented on just an overall lack of bodies on the defensive line than it is the specific loss of the individual player. But to his credit, he can play. So yeah, I think that's a fair number.
Yeah, and so my interactions with him were good, so wish him well. This is a kind of an interesting case. Defensive tackle Omar Norman Lott, second off season that he entered the portal. Last year, he of course came back. This year, he did not, and he has made his commitment to Tennessee. Obviously, a big program there, and he'll be playing for a nationally ranked team next year. Of course, this is a guy who. World of talent just was not able to really kind of put things all together here. I would say that the departure there, because I do still think, and we'll get to it, ASU does need some help on the interior of that defensive line, especially now with the 4-man front base. I put that perhaps like a 7.
Yep, 7 for me. It's even by comparison too, because I think he had greater value than Joe Moore, so I can't give him the same or lower grade. But he's still someone that hasn't even really scratched the surface of his true potential. Was quite frankly just not. I had higher expectations for him last year, but again, someone that has that potential. So so far of the list that we've gone through in these few entries so far, he tops the list of the most painful departures.
Yeah, and so I should say that this is a list, basically a chronological list of when these players. Officially entered the portal. The next one was a big one, of course. That was guard Ladarius Henderson. Of course, as we talked about, he's heading to play for Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, which I did believe that they actually both of their starting guards are returning. So some competition there for LD. Obviously, cornerstone piece of the Sun Devil offense line. This one, I think obviously was probably big pretty there. I put 8 because he was really kind of developing and making some strides to being one of the better offensive linemen in the Pac-12.
I think I'll actually go higher on this, and I'll go 9 because he's a very solid player as an NFL future leader on the team, and obviously at a position group as a whole that needs stability, needs talent. So if you're talking about what he brings and where the need is on this team, I'd say it's pretty high.
All right, so Daniel Ngata, the running back who we were always clamoring for him to get some more touches. He is going to be facing off against ASU here in a little bit later on in the season, as he's going to be a Washington Husky. Now, of course, with Xavier Valladay moving on, there's an opening there, an opportunity, but Ngata decided to head up north. I think this is, pretty substantial, although ASU, of course, as we'll talk about, did pretty well in kind of replacing that, so I'll say probably a good 7 there in terms of Ngata, and perhaps, maybe a 10 if you just say what could have been, because we never really got to see him just kind of get like a good enough workload.
Oh, yeah, 7 was the exact number I'm going to, because he kind of is like the Omar Norman Lott of the offense, or was, where, a ton of potential, 4-star guy, someone that I thought would have had more of an opportunity last year. Now, granted, for Ngata, it was largely because Valladay was just so dang good. So someone that could, do some impressive things. He's entering into a fairly loaded backfield in Washington, or certainly not. He's entering into a worse situation there, as far as competition is concerned. I mean, I this is not said out of disrespect. It's just it's going to be interesting. So yeah, but that said, he showed quite a few glimpses of talent, and ASU needs a starting running back, so yeah, that one hurts a little bit.
All right, so these 3 we can probably lump together. Kicker Jace Feely was ASU's backup kicker a season ago. Then a couple of long snappers, Gage King, who's now going to head off to UCF. John Furlman is going to be going to Ohio State, and I should mention that Jace Feely is going to Colorado. I think, given the as we'll get to the departure, maybe Feely was like a 4. The long snappers, ASU did well there, so probably losing a long snapper, those guys you can pick up. So I'd say maybe a 2 or 3 in each of those.
Yeah, I'd say maybe a 1 or 2 across the board. I mean, I'm not trying to make everybody seem irreplaceable or replaceable, but when it comes to the long snapper position, I mean, you just it's rare that you see a circumstance where you're like, my goodness, that player left, and now ASU or this team is in this horrible position. I mean, there's good play and there's bad play, but again, I mean, is there one? There are times you can say, okay, well, this quarterback from year to year was a major upgrade or major downgrade, or this running back, or whatever the case may be. Just a little bit different there. Feely was someone that never really had a huge consistent shot here, so great for him if he does get that at Colorado. But yeah, those ones are players that again, I don't anticipate their absence to make a massive mark here.
And then this one I heard a little bit. ASU had their first team all-conference punter, Eddie Chaplitsky. Perhaps the little twist of the knife. He's staying in the conference at least for this year. He's heading to USC, so I'd put that one, perhaps at an 8. I mean, or 8, maybe even a 9, just because he was developing into obviously one of the best punters in the entire conference, if not the country. But again, if it's perhaps at another position other than punter, perhaps a little bit more. But I mean, he's one of the best, very best at what he did. So that one kind of hurt a little bit when you lose him to a conference rival.
Yeah, I'll go with the solid 8 as well. Again, yeah, one of the best in the conference, one of the best in the country. If it were at a different position on offense or defense, then it probably would be a higher thing. Obviously, punters are important; they are people too. But again, by comparison, it's hard for me to say that that loss is like more as important or more important as like Ladarius Henderson. I can't track that logic, so I can't give him as high a grade on that regard.
And this was the first of 3 former Sun Devils who are going to reunite in Cincinnati. Quarterback Emory Jones, of course, opened last year as the starter, started the first 7 games, and then lost the job to Trenton Bourguet. And, it would have been interesting for me to see what Kenny Dillingham could do with another former SEC quarterback in his kind of reclamation efforts. But, so I would probably maybe put this at a 5 just because he has some impressive physical tools that I think were not utilized properly at Arizona State, but it's probably in all parties' best interest for a change.
I mean, I'll say a 4, just because he lost the job to Trenton Bourguet, and granted there were offensive coordinator issues. So who's to say it's apples to apples? If you were to clean the slate this season. Just didn't seem like it was meant to be for him to be the starting quarterback here. And then obviously ASU has added what it's added. So when you put the whole thing together, it's, it'll be, now granted we've seen this happen, as much as I personally hate to say it, Jaden Daniels looks a lot different now than he did a year ago. So who's to say maybe Emory Jones can do the same, but I just didn't seem like that opportunity was here.
And then one of the more impactful ones, in my opinion, center Ben Scott. He's heading to the Midwest. He's going to play for the Huskers. With ASU's questions on the offensive line, I'd put this at an 8.
Yep, same here. Again, he's not at the level of Darius Henderson, so I can't put him on total equal ground, but not a massive notch below. So if I had LD at a 9, Ben Scott at a 8, the experience and talent that he had, that's something that's that counts when you lose it.
Wide receiver Cam Johnson, he recently committed just a couple days ago. He's kind of going through just like the more prestigious academic institutions in the country. Of course, Vanderbilt at start, then Arizona State. Now he's heading to Northwestern and play some Big Ten football. Really wasn't able to become a factor. I mean, this is a guy who had a 50-catch season on his resume. Just a handful of catches last year as Giovanni Sanders won the starting slot receiver job and never let go. And especially with all the talent that ASU's brought in at the position, I'd say probably a 3.
Yeah, that's the exact number I was going to go with as well. Someone that I had very high expectations for, and for whatever reason just didn't pan out. So he's someone that I'm not saying you want anybody to transfer, but it's kind of like, hey, for his sake, probably good to get a new just a new coat of paint there, so to speak.
Quarterback Finn Collins. He is in the portal, has not found a spot as of yet. You just guy who just kind of buried on the depth chart. I noticed there was a few fans out there who's kind of clamoring him. He a guy with some good arm talent, but just in terms of with a new coaching staff, with a new offensive-minded head coach, I mean, it's probably something that you could see was not going to be have a great opportunity for playing time in Tempe.
Yeah, I mean, I just got to go with the 1. Again, no disrespect, but there's no foreseeable path, barring a slew of injuries, that he would have found substantial playing time at ASU.
Armand Bethea, an offensive lineman. He's heading to Bowling Green. He's pretty far down the depth chart. Of course, he's a guy who played a little D-line out of necessity again in the bowl game against Wisconsin. But just a guy that didn't seem to kind of necessarily develop as much as the coaching staff would have liked to. But still, you'd like a lot of his bodies on the offensive line as possible. So I'd probably say a 3.
Yeah, I was going to say like a 2, because if I gave Cam Johnson a 3, I mean, he actually contributed a little bit. If a guy's not able to crack into the offensive line, that's quite saying something with some of the issues ASU had with injuries and that sort of thing. So good for him to find a new location. All
right, DJ Taylor, the defensive back and kick returner. He's the second Sun Devil that announced that he will be a Cincinnati Bearcat. This one's a little complicated just because, of course, obviously everybody remembers the 108-yarder to open up the 70-7 game. But other than that, I mean, he just had another series of just kind of questionable returns over the course of his career. Some plays here and there in the secondary, but just never anything consistent. So I'd say just to fill the void, a returner, 4.
I'll say a 6, because I thought he showed more last year on defense than he had earlier. So I think he showed a little bit more value than he had in his first couple years as a primary kick returner. And he's got that. I mean, when you have that ability like he did, I mean, you can scare people to death with, fielding ones you shouldn't and that sort of thing. But then you can rip off a 40-yard punt return or a 100-yard kickoff return. Like you could get one of those and be on someone's good list. So again, not on the massive thing, but if we're kind of putting into perspective some of the other players that never saw the time of day, I mean, he adds value. He has the ability to be a very good kick returner. I mean, there's so much psychology to that it's kind of easy for it to go up and down. But a little bit above average departure there.
All right, and then this one I think caught a lot of folks off guard. Connor Soley, the linebacker, and obviously younger brother of Kyle Soley, the multi-year captain. He's going to stay in the conference, and ASU will be facing him this upcoming season. He is an Oregon Duck. For me, just kind of given his talent, he didn't necessarily have the kind of season that some were expecting, but with his off-ball linebacker skills, his coverage ability, in this new defense, in linebacker just being an area of need, I think this is probably like a 7 or 8.
Yeah, I'll say 7. I was going to say 6 or 7 just because kind of going off potential. Obviously this year didn't pan out as expected, and ASU just, weren't throwing a bunch of linebackers out there at all times, and nor will they moving forward under the new defense. So, he's someone to see. Is he going to be, the Johnny Wilson, or is he going to be the LV Bunkley Shelton kind of thing? But that still is a loss, and I think what makes a a little bit worse is just he's a local guy, but you wish him well, and there is potential for him to be a player up there.
And then the 19th and 20th departures, or players that are still in the portal, are both kickers. Robert List was the third-string kicker, I should say, for ASU last year. He had previously kicked a little bit at Colorado State. Obviously, I think one there. But this, to me, is one that kind of stung a little bit. Carter Brown, the true freshman, was 11 of 14 in his 2022 debut season. 5 of 7 from 40+, including one of 1 from 50 yards. Connected on all 33 of his PATs. He's heading to Cincinnati, running out the Bearcat trio. For me, I mean, losing a quality young kicker, a guy who had range, I think this is like a 9.
Yeah, that's the exact number that I was going to give. For everything that you just mentioned. That's something that is... if we're looking at the kick game, I'm not saying every punter is replaceable and they're all the same, because they certainly aren't. But that comparison between punters and kickers is very different. I mean, we've seen how very good kicking can be a lifesaver and how inconsistent kicking can be a nightmare. So if you've got someone that shows quite a bit of flash in the first year that he's playing, and you think you've got a few more years of him, that's something that gives you some hope. So that's a big departure for him. As for Liss, again, it's someone that was a third-string kicker, so it's a 1. So.
All right, so now let's talk about the guys that are coming in. So we've talked about the first 19 on previous episodes, so we don't necessarily going to waste your time and go into greater detail. Or if you missed those episodes, just scroll back in your feed, and you can hear us talk about defensive end Tristan Monday, coming over from Wisconsin, the former Saguaro Sabercat. Linebacker, safety kind of hybrid, Crew Jackson, another local guy coming over from K-State. Wide receiver Jake Smith, formerly of Notre Dame Prep in Texas and USC. Punter Josh Carlson fills the need left by Chaplitsky, coming over from New Mexico State. Slater Zellers is your new long snapper. He's coming over from Cal, prepped locally at Notre Dame Prep. A trio of former Chandler Wolves. The linebacker Tate Romney, quarterback Jacob Conover, both from BYU. Running back to Carlos Brooks. We had a nice interview with him on this show a couple weeks ago. Coming over from Cal. Wide receiver Melquan Stovall from Colorado State and Nevada. Offensive lineman Aaron Frost coming over from Nevada. I know we were kind of both excited about what he can do. Cameron Scadaboo from Sac State. The guy that's really exciting what he can do with this Sun Devil offense in terms of being a dual threat. Edge Prince Dorba from Texas. Offensive lineman Ben Coleman from Cal. Linebacker Travion Brown from Washington State. Quarterback Drew Pine coming over from Notre Dame. Defensive lineman Sam Benjamin coming from Idaho State. Center Leaf Fatanu from UNLV, perhaps the inside track to start there. Taking over for Ben Scott. Wide receiver Xavier Guillory, also from Idaho State. And then the last guy we talked about on a previous episode, offensive tackle Bram Walden, one of the elite high school prospects out of the state of Arizona. He's coming over from Oregon. Joe, let's talk about these new additions since we last talked. These 6 guys. We talked about 3 kickers leaving. And ASU filled that gap, presumably, or not coincidentally, I think, from Cal, a position where Charlie Regal, the new special teams coordinator, is very well familiar. Kicker Dario Longhetto. He was 11 of 17 in 2022. Just 3 of 8, though, from 40+. Has a career long of 54. Just 8 touchbacks on 13 kickoffs, so it doesn't look like he's going to be the primary kickoff guy. Over the course of his career, 26 of 36, 50% from 40+, 8 of 16 from 50+, 3 of 5. So an experienced foot there. Perhaps not necessarily a Thomas Weber, Zane Gonzalez type of career to this point, but with the familiarity that he has with Charlie Regal, it seemed like they were comfortable with him taking over those duties.
Yeah, and I think this is, I'm not saying it's like a Band-Aid or a stopgap, but there's some elements of that. So, with this transfer portal era, there are a lot of positions where, you can find a guy for a year and then, build from there. ASU had a pretty solid season with Christian Zendejas as the kicker, and his abilities and, limitations sound kind of similar to what we're discussing here. So you've got an experienced leg, so that's a good find there. Of course, it's no one's going to say it's an equal trade-off, so to speak, for Carter Brown, but again, to get an experienced leg back in there and put together a plan for the future to get someone, a lot of us have to scrap what we used to know and used to think as far as personnel. When you have a team, you think that that's what you're going to have for 3, 4, 5 years, and now there's so much year-over-year stuff to where you just hope that you can have the stability that you need, and we'll see how aggressive ASU is on offense. Are they going to go for it a lot more than we might have seen in the past? There's some other things involved in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. So Dillingham's a guy that likes to go for things a little more aggressively than Herm Edwards, although that's probably true of most people. So perhaps you don't be seeing a whole lot of 45, 46-yard field goal attempts in the future. ASU did add a nice piece to the secondary. Safety was a need with Corey Bethley moving on. Xavier Alford, 6 foot, 190-pounder from USC. He missed last season with injury, but in 2021 led the Trojans with 3 interceptions, 2 of which came against Arizona State. A former 4-star prospect in the class of 2020. Played it with Texas initially, kind of the Jake Smith career arc there. And, given that year with injury, he has potentially up to 3 years left.
Yeah, that's one that, man, if he can come back full strength, I think that can be I want to say like a sneaky good addition, but it's not really that sneaky in the sense he's played at some, obviously major power programs. But it just seems like, not a lot of people are talking about it like after the fact. There's just been so much news going on with ASU, kind of hard to keep up, hard to focus on one thing at any given time. But again, if he's someone that if he's healthy and ready to go, you could be talking about an all-conference caliber player, and maybe like a similar type of acquisition to what the ASU got last year with Bethley and Edmonds, where they made some really impressive strikes at the safety positions. Yeah,
and especially with this 3-safety defense that ASU is going to be run out, it's not hard to envision Edmonds, Alford being some cornerstones back there as well. ASU, as we'll talk about, really kind of continued to bolster the wide receiver group, getting Troy O'Meary from Texas, 6'3", 213-pounder, some good frame there, good size. Also a former 4-star member of the class of 2020. Battled injuries, though, so he was injured in 2020 and 2021. Just 4 games and 1 catch for 9 yards, but also just with potentially some of his eligibility, a guy who could be around for a number of years. He has 3 years left.
Yeah, and that's a common theme that you're seeing not only among these transfers that we're talking about, but some others in the group are ones that the Carfax report might not be sterling. There might be some dings and dents on it, but you know what? If you can, the ASU's in a position where they kind of need to take a gamble on some players that, if they pan out, like a Jake Smith, that's obviously the top of the list in this regard. If you can get anywhere near their potential, then you really struck gold. So again, there's a little bit of gamble involved, but when you have someone who's got many years left to play, it's kind of one thing if it were a grad transfer with 1 year to where hey, you got one shot, but yeah, big size there. Kind of reminds you of like the Mike Willie type frame, something like that. You hope that he can bring a physical presence out there because ASU has a lot of the smaller, speedier receivers, but that gives you something else, a dynamic that could be very valuable.
Yeah, that's the thing about the portal is like it brings guys that, and a lot of the guys that ASU is bringing in have multiple years, so it's not just kind of the one and dones like it used to be with the grad transfers. So that's, I think, really a good picture of what the foundation ASU is trying to kind of lay down here in the early days of the Kenny Dillingham era. Now, one of those kind of 1 year guys left is a defensive tackle of, I think, a key area of need for ASU. Deshaun Mallory coming up from Michigan State, 6'2", 280-pounder. Spent 5 years at East Lansing. Appeared in 27 games, making 2.5 sacks, 5 TFLs, and just kind of a guy who's looking for a greater role. And I think with ASU's needs in the interior of a defensive line, he has an opportunity to make his mark.
Yeah, this is one that a lot of folks are pretty high on. And if you look at some of the numbers and things like that, it may not leap off the page, but there's some excitement there for the player that he is and also for the need. So when you bring someone from a power conference program that maybe has had its ups and downs in the last couple of years, but that's a big deal. There's an area where you need bodies, you need experience. It's probably a little lofty to hope that he's going to give you what Nesta Jade Silvera gave you, but the expectations are going to be pretty high for him.
And ASU perhaps is looking to maybe strike a smaller Chris Edmonds gold mine yet again. They're going to the FCS level. They have brought in Shamari Simmons, from Austin P, 6 foot, 180-pounder, an All-A-Sun Conference selection, 63 tackles, 4 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, so obviously got a good nose for the ball. Also spent some time at JUCO earlier in his career. He's a guy that has 2 seasons of eligibility left.
Yeah, just restock and retooling that secondary. Different deal where you're going to need, more starters in there, more backups. There's been a lot of shuffling around since those days of, the last couple of recruiting classes with Antonio Pierce and them, where they were just stockpiling all these defensive backs. A lot of them were working their way out of the program. So, that's one of those gets where you kind of take a little bit of a flyer of a guy coming up from the FCS level. Chris Edmonds did that to a very high degree, so hopefully Lightning can strike twice.
And so news always breaks on the day that we record, and perhaps the biggest name or the biggest recruited guy coming in as part of this class landed earlier today. A former 5-star prospect out of the class of 2021, the number 24 overall player, not just the number 24 out of in his state or at his position. Joe, Rivals had this guy 24th overall in the entire class. He is the coming over from Oklahoma, Clayton Smith, outside linebacker, edge type of player, 6'4", 245-pounder. He was redshirted in 2021, appeared in 4 games, and in 4 games again last year, making 5 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. Coming up, a Texas bred player, really a guy who has tremendous upside, potential NFL upside with that frame, those accolades, and again, a really good part. 3 years of eligibility left of Clayton Smith potentially being in Tempe.
Yeah, this one just kind of snuck through, in the message boards the day before it was announced here today. It's like, oh, by the way, this 5-star former high school recruit is expected to commit to ASU. He's like, wait, hold up.
Get in the huddle.
Right, exactly. Yep, that's another example. That news broke about 24 hours or more before it was announced publicly. Sun Devil fans who were locked into the huddle knew what was going on there. So, man, that's high potential there. So, as with any of these transfers where the jury is still out, if they just haven't necessarily had the time to, put it on the field at the college level, I mean, what the heck more could you really want if you're talking about wanting someone with a high recruiting pedigree? Doesn't get all that much better than that. So that's someone that, I mean, man, if you can get anything near that 5-star potential, that is some all-world stuff. I mean, you think about 5-star guys, they don't come to ASU all that often. You talk about, the N'Keal Harrys, that sort of thing. Jack Jones, he was one, I believe, when he went to USC. He's in the NFL. It's a rare deal. So that's something that you get that on board, and, man, you got to be thrilled.
Yeah, that's a really intriguing piece. So we'll see exactly how A.J. Cooper and defensive coordinator Brian Ward are going to be able to scheme him up. There are 2 guys that we did not talk about since our last episode. Now, we had mentioned that Anthony Cooper and B.J. Green, both defensive linemen, entered the portal and opted to come back. Since that time, 2 more guys have decided to come back and continue to be Sun Devils. Staying on that defensive line, Garen Stansbury, a guy who was very raw coming over from Louisiana. It was kind of a project of former D-line coach Robert Rodriguez, but tremendous upside and continues to get better. He's decided to come back and develop on this the Sun Devil defense, and this is a nice piece there at the cornerback position. If this guy can get his kind of mental side of the game and the focus and the discipline to go with his all-world talent, Isaiah Johnson can be a real good cornerback in this league.
Yeah, starting with Stansbury, someone with potential. I haven't seen him much on the field, but again, at the defensive line, you want to take bodies with potential because you need them out here. Isaiah Johnson, that was one that was it seemed like a foregone conclusion that he was going to enter the transfer portal. So, it was painful when it happened, but you looked at it, it's like, man, it's kind of like a what could have been. But for things to reverse course, for him to return to ASU, you certainly hope that there is something in place with this staff or support staff, or my goodness, brother DJ Foster, get him under your wing, mentor him, something. Because as you mentioned, it would be a damn shame if he can't live up to his potential. I know not everybody does, but as you mentioned, he showed some flashes. He has the ability to be a next-level player. Just got to lock it down between the ears. So hopefully the staff is in place to be able to get that happening because, again, this guy could be a high-level, all-conference caliber player before it's all said and done. He's got a lot of football left to play at the college level. So it's one that you take back, in my opinion, with open arms. And, if the combination can be right, this can be a guy that's really off to the races, but it's all up to him.
So ASU had those 4 returns from the portal and 25 additions. Here's a quick breakdown as we put a bow on this very active window. 4 offensive linemen, Joe, 4 wide receivers, 3 linebackers, 3 D linemen, 2 edge rushers, 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 DBs, a kicker, a punter, and a long snapper. I think they did really well. I mean, you look especially at the offensive line. Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a number of probably like day one starters, perhaps center Leaf Fatanu, Aaron Frost from Nevada, Ben Coleman is probably going to be a starter on that offensive line right there. You have an elite offensive line prospect in Bram Walden with multiple years. It could be a cornerstone, so you're addressing the now and the future. And for me, also, I think in one area they did really well was at edge rusher, because we just talked about Clayton Smith, former 5-star guy off the edge. Prince Dorba, former 4-star guy coming over from Texas. They signed Ashley Williams, a 4-star prospect who can be a true freshman, former Auburn commit. And then out of the JUCO ranks, they got one of the best in the entire junior college system in Elijah O'Neal. So a year after ASU being completely impotent, really, in the pass rush and bringing quarterbacks down, just 17 on the entire season, loading up on those edge guys in this new aggressive defense, I really like what they did there.
Yeah, you got to be very, very impressed there, because I think a lot of folks are clamoring, and rightly so, for defensive linemen to be added from this transfer group, like, big old nose tackles, things like that. But if you look at just the overall, pass rush component, I know that the defensive line presence is not limited to that. But if you look at that component to things, these edge rushers, some of whom probably might be like listed as a linebacker now, but could be a defensive end. That kind of adds to that whole mix, and you got to be very happy with that. I mean, ASU's really brought in quite a few, and it's a distribution of eligibility. Again, a true freshman. You got some guys with years behind them in the college level. A little bit of everything there. So yeah, that's something that I think you got to be happy about.
All right, so now we'll kind of end things on some areas that I think that ASU could still address in this upcoming window. I still think they could probably use some off-ball linebackers, some more traditional linebackers. They obviously did really well on the edge, and I like Trey Brown coming over from Wazoo. I think is probably going to, just given the familiarity with Ward and Cooper, you could probably pencil him in as one of the 2 linebacker starters. Tate Romney perhaps in there. Will Schaefer has been around this program and has really done some good things. I just would like to see some more depth at linebacker, but I think defensive tackle for me is the number one need. You still need some more big, bad dudes on the interior of this defensive line. They got some intriguing talent now, but I think you need more, and I'd like to see them in that 15-day span get active there.
Yeah, that's going to be probably the biggest target on any side of the ball, and they know what they need to do, and it's a tough circumstance. We just didn't have a lot for last year. You lose some seniors and transfers, so there is a bit of a disadvantage, but yeah, no doubt about it, the defensive line is the primary target.
All right, so as we wind down this episode, here's our conversation with Luke Moga. I know that he's a highly regarded and up-and-coming local quarterback prospect. Get his thoughts on being recruited by Kenny Dillingham and the staff. But, of course, a lot of folks would like to see him take a drive over to Tempe as his next home. But, perhaps if he does, Joe, could be in one of the fine automobiles from the Jones Auto Group.
There you go. Things are rolling right now. They can hit the brakes a little bit on this transfer portal stuff for the most part with this mini break that's going on for these next couple of months. But as you know, if you want to be rolling in style, get hooked up, get a vehicle, get a new ride for the new year from Jones Auto Group. We've got 4 dealership locations in the state of Arizona. They have been family owned and operated for more than 50 years. These folks, as you know, are avid supporters of ASU and Sun Devil athletics. So Jones Auto Group is ready to roll out the maroon carpet VIP treatment to fellow members of the Sun Devil family just like you. As you know from the past, they've been involved in the NIL capacity of things. So these folks are invested in Sun Devil athletics and the success of ASU student athletes. They are deeply supportive of the entire Arizona State community. At Jones Auto Group, the Sun Devil community is truly treated like family. If you're concerned about any issues whatsoever, credit issues, whatever it might be that has you second-guessing whether or not you want to move forward pursuing the vehicle of your dream, Don't let that get in your way. Reach out to Jones Auto Group. They will outline every possible option to create a winning game plan just for you. Also, as I talk about all the time, if you want to see how you can possibly save money on the tax dollars that you pay on a new vehicle, that adds up a lot when you're getting a new ride. That is yet another unique advantage that Jones Auto Group can discuss with you. So if you're even considering a new vehicle, if you're kicking the tires on the idea of a new ride for the new year, talk to Jones Auto Group. How you do it, you know by now, but I'll remind you. Text DEVILS, of course you know how to spell that word, DEVILS, to 67199. That's DEVILS. Text that to 67199. You'll get in touch with an owner. So we're not talking about an automated switchboard, a robot talking to you, a customer service representative that's on a whole different continent or even planet. You're getting direct contact with Parker Jones, not only the owner and GM, but a third-generation Arizona State alum, and just like you, a diehard Sun Devil fan. So to get with Parker to talk about the new ride in your life, text DEVILS to 67199. That's DEVILS to 67199. Check them out online. Browse their inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles at jonesautocenters.com. Jones Auto Group, Arizona's best since 1970.
So here's our conversation with quarterback Luke Moga. All right, Luke, you're somebody who has some familiarity with the Arizona State football program. You've been to Tempe. You've seen the program up close on a couple of visits. What things have really kind of jumped out to you most during those visits to ASU?
I would just say the new culture of the staff and the returning players and the new players that they're building in that program and the way Coach Dillingham envisions it going. And I think he's going to bring that into fruition and just the program and the identity that they're building there.
You know, when you talk about Coach Dillingham, obviously a guy who has such a connection to Tempe, to the Valley, to Arizona State specifically, what are the things that kind of jump out about Kenny Dillingham as a college head coach?
Yeah, obviously he's got one of the brightest minds in college football. He's been at Memphis, Florida State, Auburn, Oregon, and the numbers there speak for themselves. And, you know, he's got the program and the offense going in such a great way. He's brought coaches back, you know, that want to be there and that are home. So, you know, he's just doing everything, the right things, and to put ASU in a position to compete for Pac-12 titles.
Now you mentioned, of course, his offense, and, you know, over the course of a number of stops has really put up some really great numbers. You know, from a quarterback's perspective, you know, when you look at his offense, look at his offensive scheme, what he likes to do from his offensive perspective, what are some of the things that kind of jump out to you? What are the impressions of this Dillingham offense?
I would just say that, you know, the goal of a good offense is to make the defense frustrated, and he definitely does a good job of that, whether it's motioning in formations or running it or throwing it downfield, taking shots. He's a defensive coordinator's worst nightmare.
Now, offensive coordinator Bo Baldwin has a great track record in his own right of success on the offensive side of the ball, of mentoring young quarterbacks. You know, what are some of the things as a quarterback prospect that kind of jump out to you about what Bo Baldwin is doing from an offensive perspective, from an offensive coordinator capacity, working in conjunction with Coach Dillingham? Yeah,
I just really like how him and from meetings with them, how him and Coach Dillingham are on the same page offensively and are sort of taking the stuff that he's done in his past with Coach Baldwin's stuff and really making not a new scheme, but some new things implemented in their scheme, and they just work off each other really well.
You know, ASU has really put a focus on local players, on local high school talent, local high school coaches, and building up those relationships since they arrived here a couple months ago. How do you think that this new regime and this new focus from the Sun Devil side of things is being received by kind of local players like yourself and local high school coaches?
Yeah, I think they're doing a good job. Arizona is slowly getting up there with the Floridas, the Texas, the Californias, if not already up there in terms of recruit and talent. If they just kept in-state kids, sort of the feeling is that they would win 8 or 9 games a year, and that's what they're trying to do.
What do you, as a local recruit who's got a number of schools coming after him, what is it? Do you think that the local Arizona high school star wants from the local school, whether it's ASU or U of A?
I don't know. Just strong efforts to keep me in state is something that means a lot, and both schools are certainly doing that early.
Obviously, a term like hometown hero certainly gets thrown around a lot, especially now that ASU is making such a renewed effort to keeping the local talent in state. From your perspective, how much appeal does, kind of being that quote unquote hometown hero as a guy who can, be homegrown and lead the hometown university to new heights? How much appeal does that have for you?
Yeah, that definitely means a lot, and that's obviously a good opportunity and something that I would like. But I'm going to go through the process, and if I go to ASU, U of A, NAU, GCU at a football team, I'm going to go to whatever university fits me the best. But it definitely is appealing.
Now, you're a guy whose recruitment has really kind of taken off. Of course, ASU has the offer, and a number of other schools have since made offers and more notice as your profile continues to rise. What's it like from your perspective, just having these schools, these Division I schools, come after you and really kind of like what they see?
Yeah, it's moving pretty fast. Obviously, I'm a late bloomer when it comes to recruitment, so it's definitely a wild ride. And like I said, it's going fast. I'm throwing for 10 Power 5 schools tomorrow, and then 2 on Thursday. So it's all coming pretty quick.
You're a guy who only really kind of started playing football just a few years ago. What were some of the reasons that you're kind of a late bloomer or late to the game?
Yeah, that's a direct correlation. Obviously, that I started playing freshman year. I was really competitive in soccer. That's what my sister played. She went to U of A and played soccer, and I played every sport, club basketball. I played for MLS Academy soccer, so that was obviously a big deal. And then my dad played in the SEC, so I've been around him my entire life, and he's kind of been urging me to play. I like to say I wish I played earlier, but I believe it's kind of a cool story, and I have so much room to learn and grow. So that's definitely a direct correlation to this late recruitment blow up.
What's growing up in a household with a dad who played ball in the SEC, of course, they like to say down there that it just means more. What was it like, kind of growing up, as you mentioned, kind of principally a soccer player with a dad who had that college football, that SEC background?
Yeah, we've been around it. My favorite thing to do when I was little was to go to Cardinals games. We've been season ticket holders for 15 years, kind of shied away from it, them not being good this season, but watching college ball games with him on Saturdays and watching NFL games, it was just fun to talk it up and see what he had to say.
Now, you're a guy, obviously the number of schools that are continuing to, be impressed with your game and extend those offers. For any ASU fans out there who might not have seen you in action for Sunny Slope, give us the self-scouting report. Describe your game. Obviously, you're a guy who's talented throwing the ball, but also, I believe you have, around 4.5 type of speed.
Yeah, I get that from my dad. He was a 10.6 guy in track in high school before playing at Kentucky. So I'm trying to beat that this track season. But, I have a strong live arm. I don't get enough credit nationally for my arm and how much I've come. But, I don't have to prove anything to anybody, just prove myself right. But I'm a versatile guy who can extend plays and an explosive guy who can win you big ball games.
When you talk to guys like Kenny Dillingham or Bo Baldwin, what are some of the things that they tell you that they really like about what you bring to the field and to an offense?
Yeah, just like I said, the versatility and doing it with my arm, with my legs, and how I see the game.
When you're playing for Sunny Slope, that's not necessarily a school that's associated with the Saguaros, the Chandlers of the world, but continuing with your talents and building Sunny Slope up, and having greater and greater success. What's it like, having that, the ability to kind of bring a program that historically may not have been there, but now that with you at the helm has a chance to do some really great things.
Yeah, like some people know, I've had some talks before last season of obviously going somewhere else, but my sisters both have come through Sunny Slope. My parents being around it, I'm so glad I stayed, and that's ultimately the reason to, build it up to a school that's given so much to me. I want to give everything I can to that school and, maybe get some kids in the future to say, why not Sunny Slope instead of going to the Brophies or the Pinnacles in Central Phoenix or going out to a Chandler school, like you said.
Do you feel that there's maybe perhaps any parallels, from the prep level of just Sunny Slope of having the opportunity to be at the forefront of building up a program to perhaps, like a school like ASU that is, not necessarily been a historical blue blood, but having the opportunity to kind of get in on the ground floor and build them up?
Yeah, that's definitely something I'd like to do wherever I go, whether it's, like I said, ASU or a different university. That just means a lot, showing to a university that I'm loyal. I plan on going to college, not to transfer, but to be there for 3 to 4 years. Obviously, if something happens, that's completely different. But when I do end up committing, I plan to go to that university and sort of let it be known that the Luke Moga era for 3 to 4 years at that school.
Now, of course, quarterbacks tend to be guys who commit earlier in the recruitment process. Do you feel that is there a timeline a rough timeline at least, that you've set out for yourself when you'd like to have your college decision made up?
I would say no. Being a late bloomer, I imagine some of these bigger blue blood schools that I'm talking to are going to jump on sort of late, so that it could be next month. It could be on signing day, next December. It could be the summer. I have absolutely no clue, and it's just sort of based off my recruitment, I would say, and what schools jump on.
No, obviously, I think that you have a pretty busy schedule up ahead. Things like the Elite 11, the opening. Some of these camps, as you mentioned, you're throwing for a number of schools here in the next couple of days. What's it like over the next couple of months, just knowing that these schools continue to take notice of you, and you're putting in that work to get keep those offers coming in.
Yeah, it's busy. Track starts in 2 weeks. Got the Elite 11, different schools coming out here to see me throw live. Got my extra classes so I can graduate early next December. It's definitely busy. Not a lot of free time, I would say.
And then, finally, obviously you got one more season of high school ball coming up ahead. What are some of the things that you're working on, you're focusing on, and the aspects of your game that you're looking to elevate heading into that final year?
I would say just keep elevating my game, mechanically, mentally, and physically. But the main goal heading into the next season is winning a playoff game. My school has an 8-year playoff drought, failed to deliver that this year. So that is 100% the focus going into next season.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guest, quarterback Luke Moga of Sunny Slope High School. Make sure you are staying with us on the social media side. Obviously, there's no off season. Lots going on. Not just on football, but of course, baseball starting up here pretty soon. We'll be covering that a lot. Basketball is doing pretty good themselves, so we'll be discussing all of that. You can follow the show on Instagram at Speak of the Devils, on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, and give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at BDenny29.
And you can follow me on all the things at Joe Healy 42. Once again, huge shout out to our awesome sponsors: DeFalco's Deli, Cactus Sports, DevilsDigest.com, Jones Auto Group, and of course also Spaghetti Shack, which you know by now is not just Sun Devil owned, but owned and operated by a former Sparky the Sun Devil. They're located in Tempe near the intersection of Rural and Guadalupe at 6340 South Rural Road, Suite 114. Spaghetti Shack is open Monday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., Fridays and Saturdays from 11 to 10:30, and Sundays from 11 to 8. Their new Ghost Kitchen is available at Bar Vigneto. We've talked about that quite a bit, so I guess calling it new may not be too honest, but it's still there. 7215 South Power Road in Queen Creek. So you go to SpaghettiShack.com, click Order Now. It'll give you the option to place an order either at the Tempe location or the Queen Creek Ghost Kitchen location. So you place your order online. If you're out there in Queen Creek, pick up your grub there at Bar Vigneto, and in no time you'll be eating some good Spaghetti Shack food. So you can find them on Facebook at The Spaghetti Shack. Follow them at Spaghetti_Shack on Twitter and on Instagram at The Spaghetti Shack, so you can be first to know when you can go check them out and get all the good stuff that they have got to serve you. To view their menu, hours, and to order online, visit their website at thespaghettishack.com. The Spaghetti Shack, takeout for the pasta-loving people. And last but not least, as always, a huge thank you to Sun Devil Family Charities, a 501c3 nonprofit organization created primarily for the purpose of raising funds to provide financial assistance to Arizona State University alumni, students, staff, and immediate family members adversely affected by medical issues. Monetary donations are always appreciated and support those in need due to unexpected medical conditions. And Sun Devil Family Charities also has volunteer and sponsorship opportunities available that you can learn about on their website. They also have got some interesting fundraising opportunities coming up. I know they're doing some Super Bowl squares that you can learn about on their social media, so check them out. Look for Sun Devil Family Charities. Also some cornhole events coming up. Not quite yet that big cornhole bowl they've had in the past, but some other fundraising opportunities that you can get out, have a good time, and support a very worthy cause. For more details about all that and about Sun Devil Family Charities, you can support them. Check them out online, sundevilfamily.org.
Once you're done supporting our amazing sponsors, make sure to drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe and I will be back next week with the latest updates from the busy off season, looking ahead with basketball and baseball.